Okay, so we're on for tonight's program, and we're going to be talking. Title of the program is "Get Off the Fence," and really, that's a figure of speech or a metaphor for being stuck in a mode of indecision. Basically, is what that means. Is that you won't make a decision one way or the other. You just try to walk in the middle, and you won't commit to anything. So it can be the things we're going to discuss have to do with indecision, have to do with inability to make commitments to things and stick to them. All these things should work for that, but mainly a big focus on indecision. What do you do? What are the main causal factors when you find yourself on the fence? What are the main causal factors of that? And what are some of the strategies? I'm going to just share strategies that have worked very well for me over the 40 plus years that I've needed to be a decision maker, been in management positions or whatever, where decision making has been really important. I'm an excellent decision maker. Sometimes I still get stuck on the fence, but it's very rare, and it's primarily because I have these strategies, and I actually do use the strategies that I'm going to tell you, and they're very, very effective. So I don't find myself in a situation for very long where I can't make a decision, and a good decision. I trust my decisions because they're not always good decisions, but they're most always good decisions, and I know how to rebound if I make a bad decision. So how did I get to the point that I became a pretty quick decision maker? For one thing, I mean, I'm not goofy in that I'm not a haphazard decision maker. You can have folks who, they'll be good decision makers, but they're very often, if not always, almost always making very bad decisions. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being a quick and precise decision maker and getting accurate decisions, making accurate decisions most of the time. That would be the ideal situation. So how did I become the rapid decision maker? That part, the speed part, how did that happen? Well, let's back up a little bit. Let's talk about some of the causes of indecision. Why do we find ourselves on the fence? You hear me say it a million times. I'll go back to the root, the core of any problem we ever face. The root level is going to be belief codes, and it certainly is belief codes in any kind of inability or lack of willingness to make a decision. Something is happening at either a conscious level, most often at a subconscious level, that is making you fearful, making you afraid of just flat out making a bad decision. And the back end of the equation is, if I make a bad decision, if I don't choose correctly, blah, blah, blah happens. You probably made some bad decisions in the past, maybe not in this life, big bad decisions, not just little teeny things, big things that led to massive trauma in either your life or someone else's life. And so you're projecting some of that onto what happens if I make the wrong judgment call. An entire species dies or a planet blows up or whatever, but none of that is actually going to happen to you in this lifetime. But it's afraid of making a bad decision, fear of losing something. If I choose this way, I may lose out on something else. That's very, very common. Fear of harming yourself in some way, fear of harming someone else or something else. Those are the main basic structure of the belief codes that will be involved. It's about fear of you getting hurt in some way or somebody else getting hurt in some way. So you've got to just go in and you've got to figure out, we'll talk about strategies, but primarily it's figuring out what you're thinking and getting out of resonance with those codes, because whatever it is you're thinking doesn't have to pan out. Even if you've made every decision you've ever made in your life has been a bad decision, it doesn't mean that the decision you're going to make next is going to be a bad decision. There's that option. So past history does not predict, unless belief codes are involved, does not predict your future. Past history only predicts your future when you allow that to happen. So belief codes. Chaos programming is very often a reason. The type of belief coding is very often chaos programming. What that means is you've got one belief code, usually from one point in time, that says it's a good decision. This is a really good bet for me. Doing this is something that's really, really good for me. And on the back end of that, from another time period, sometimes an entirely different life, very often an entirely different lifetime, you've got belief codes where it was the exact opposite, where that very thing that was a pleasurable experience, that was a great experience for you, translated as an awful experience in another lifetime. And so you have it's the damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. And literally, you think, again, I refer to us always as a computer. Think of our equipment as a computer. The computer simply cannot make a decision, because the minute that you bring up the subconscious can't make a decision. You still have the willful conscious mind. You still have the ability to exercise your willful intention and make a decision. But what the subconscious is doing, and it's going to make it hard even for you at a conscious level to rise above it, but you certainly can. The conscious mind is saying, if you do this, if you do this, you're in trouble. If you do this, you're in trouble. If you do this, as soon as you pull up one, you automatically pull up the other, and you literally would be on the fence from a thought standpoint. And so you got to find out. You always got to question right from the get-go: am I running some type of chaos programming? And I just explained to you what chaos programming is, and just that would be my very first question when I find myself on the fence, unable to make a decision, to choose between a couple of options, or maybe one of those options is just staying right where I'm at, doing exactly what I'm doing, and another choice over here moving in a different direction. If I find that I can't figure out, I can't get a good read, a good intuitive read, I can't get a good read in my heart, whatever, I'm going to guess there's chaos programming, and I'm going to douse about that right away. Am I running some kind of chaos programming? And I'm going to go after the codes and clear them. Lack of information is another thing that setting aside the subconscious stuff, there's a lot of very conscious things that are often going on with people who find themselves in a situation on occasion or perpetually not able to make decisions, or perpetually about certain categories in their life even. Sometimes people are really good at making decisions, let's say for other people, or they're really good at making decisions in certain categories of their life. Like they might be really good about making financial decisions, but they're really lousy at making decisions about the right and perfect romantic partner to choose, something like that, out of several options. But one of the things that is often at the root of the very mundane level problem is simply a lack of information. There's not enough information to actually make a qualified good decision, because you're working with too little, not enough data basically to logically make a good decision. Now we can attempt to rely on intuition. One of the fix-its will be douse the situation, but typically I would not recommend that, actually, as I don't personally use that as my standard modus operandi. I will, if I am not clear about which choice to make when a choice is facing me, I will start by gathering more information to see if I can find anything that would make one choice stand out more favorably than another choice. And I will also douse about it, but even the dowsing, if I douse that one choice is better than another, I won't just on pure intuition. Typically, I will do it on some occasions, but I typically will not on pure intuition say I'm going to go that way, especially if I've been debating, if I haven't seen very clearly right out the gate why one decision would be better than the other. I might douse about it, but then I will look for evidence to support why that second choice would be a good choice. And sometimes I won't be able to find it, but 99% of the time you will be able to find it. Why do you want to do that? Because if you do find evidence to support what you're getting as the intuitive reading, then you're going to more likely be in a state state of heightened confidence as you move in the direction of the decision that you've made. You want to not just be good at, and fairly quick at making decisions, but you want to feel so confident and so trusting in your decision making ability in the decision that you have made that you'll move forward without fears. Because if you make a decision and it doesn't matter what the decision is about, if you make a decision and every 10 minutes after that you're worrying if you've made the good decision, you're going to so completely sabotage yourself, it will end up being a very bad decision, because the state of fear, the chronic fear being nudged, will attract circumstances that will make it a bad decision for you. So even though it could have been a good decision initially. Anyway, lack of information, that's very left brain. You can also dowse for information. You can gather extra information that way, but primarily when I say this, I mean on a very mundane, logical level. Find more tangible, factual information that can give you a better foundation for making a good decision. Not enough options, or too many options. One of the I learned about the too many options thing in sales. One of the things that you never want to do as a professional salesperson is you never ever want to give the client too many choices, especially if it's a big product. Like I was in the apartment industry for a long time, and I was selling I wasn't selling, but I was training people how to sell high-end apartments and high-end rental packages. And a lot of times, I'd walk into these situations, and first thing I'd do is I'd have the sales representatives give me a tour and show me what they were doing, how they were handling the salespeople or the customers. And I would go. It was very common for me to someone with the best intentions, and they just wanted to show you everything. They did very little qualifying up front, and they would just want to show you 15 different apartments. Well, by the time the client would actually get back from seeing that many apartments, they were absolutely exhausted, and everything was confused because there was too much data to process. So whenever you're if you have too many options facing you, with my advice to them, and it would always increase closing ratios. I mean, I wouldn't even have to guess, is this going to increase their closing ratios? I'd tell them, you can show them 2 choices, that's it. Do not show them more than 2 choices. And they'd say, well, what if the 2 choices are not ideal choices? What do we do then? What if they're going to walk because those 2 choices are not enough options, the other bet? And then I'd say, then you mumble for a short while and you figure out, you pull a 3rd option out of the basket, and it's got to be a really great option. It's got to be the option. Even if you've got 10 options, you can't tell them you have 10 other options. You need to figure out, by knowing enough about them, what you have in those 10 options, what one choice out of the 10 you actually have available matches them the best based on what you've now learned about them from spending a little time with them. And sure enough, their closing ratios would not just change, they would skyrocket if that was their pattern of showing too many choices. People in general are lousy decision makers. And the more options you share with them, and so you're a person too, the more options that are put in front of you, the more difficulty you're going to have choosing between the options. So even with you, you need to narrow down the options. How do we end up with so many options? How does that many options end up in front of us in the first place? Because we haven't qualified ourselves. It's just like in sales. We haven't gotten really clear about what our primary objective is. When you get very, very, very clear about what it is you want, whether it's in a product or in a vacation or in a romantic partner or whatever it might be, if you're very, very clear about the type of experience you want to have, just your clarity alone begins chunking down the options. And if you really stay true to what it is you want, you'll find that you end up with just a very small selection of options that are very easy to decide amongst to actually that match what it is that you're actually after. And if you can't see in that small number of options exactly what's the best fit, then again, I'm going to share some other strategies with you. But bottom line is just by being really, really clear about what you want and getting clear, use that as a red flag. If there are so many options in front of you, you're just totally, mind is totally boggled. You just can't see through the maze. Just take that as a red flag that you're not clear about your objective. If you were clear about it, those many options wouldn't be visible to you. You wouldn't even be considering most of the things on the plate. That could be most of the potential romantic partners or whatever. They wouldn't even, they might be out there floating in the field, but they'd never end up on your doorstep, or if they did, you wouldn't consider them even for a second. They'd never get into the game at all because you'd be so clear about your options, about what you want, and those are the options that'll come forward. Not enough options. That's where you can't make a decision, or it just seems really difficult to make the decision because you just, no matter how you analyze logically, maybe you're dowsing, whatever, and neither decision or none of the things that are on the plate seem right. No matter how hard you look for evidence for something to be right, it just isn't. That's an indication that you have made the tragic error of thinking there's not, let's say you've got 3 choices, you've made the tragic error of thinking there's not a 4th choice. And there are always other options. If you don't see, if you're looking at 2 decisions, you're on the fence between 2 decisions, and neither one of them is ideal, it means you need to look for a 3rd option. That's what will get you off the fence. Look for a 3rd option. So again, it could be that problem, not enough options. It could be exhaustion or shell shock. You may be in a situation where you're physically, mentally, emotionally just drained from illness, from working conditions, from who knows what. Or you may have just come out of a situation that was really like, it might have really been a battle situation, like being a soldier, or you might have been in some kind of like say a really, really bad divorce, something like that was almost like being in a war. And if the stress of a situation is really, really challenging, you'll have a heck of a time if you're faced with the same type of decision, again, like in a marriage going really, really bad and being like a war at the end. You end up like you are shell-shocked, and next time that opportunity presents itself, you may find you have a heck of a time getting into any kind of committed situation because you're still in shell shock from the past. You keep on pulling up all those horror memories from that situation, and it causes you to go in a freeze mode, and you can't decide about anything. That could be shell shock from a job situation that was highly stressful, a relationship situation, a financial situation. Now you become mamby-pamby about making financial decisions, can't get off the fence about that. Again, that is a common cause of just, I call it paralyzed with fear of finding yourself in the same situation, and every choice looks like the same situation to you, so you make no choice because you're just so afraid of it. Using all brain and no heart. This is a big one where you're letting letting something like dowsing, which is a very mental exercise, or something like just sheer logic drive all your decisions instead of really using heavily the heart process and letting your heart guide you to what really is calling to you as a fulfillment of whatever your deepest desires are. Sometimes the heart call isn't always as evident as it is in other times, but the heart will always attempt to get involved, and can always literally be used as an aid if you'll let it, if you'll actually start using that as a decision-making device, basically. It becomes increasingly important depending on what what certain decisions you are attempting to make. So these are the primary causal factors of indecision. I'm sure there's others, but these are the biggies. So how do you make decisions, regardless of what the causal factor is? How do you begin? And my first rule of thumb in making decisions, and it's something that I use all the time, is make a decision. Just look at the logical things, try to feel it through, whatever. Make a choice. And leave the door open that it could be the wrong choice. Do the best you can to make the best decision. But tell yourself that you're always free to choose your mind and change a different direction. It's almost like people completely forget about this, that we have the ability to change our mind in pretty much every situation in life, except perhaps jumping off a building to kill ourselves, something like that, where nope, you're not going to get a second opportunity on that. You're not going to have an opportunity to change your mind in all likelihood. I mean, something could happen. All of a sudden someone runs out with a net to catch you or something like that. But it's extremes like that. Most decisions that you are faced with in life, and I'd say 99.99% of all decisions that you make in life are decisions that are changeable, that you can change your course at any time along the path. And if you hear yourself saying, no, I can't do this, I can't do that, it's belief codes. Yes, you can. I've gotten into this marriage, I made this commitment, blah, blah. I can't back out of it now. Why not? I accepted this job. I went through all this. I got this degree, blah, blah, but I hate what I'm doing. I can't change my mind now, for God's sake. I spent $100,000 or $150,000 on the education. I can't turn around. My parents will be so disappointed. Well, those are all belief codes. That's not, you literally are incapable of changing your mind and making a different decision about your career. You're choosing not to change your mind for all these bogus reasons. So clear all the vesting in everybody else's opinion and all the money you spent and all that kind of stuff and make a different decision. Or live with the bad decision that you've already figured out you made and be unhappy for the rest of your life. So you can always change your mind and choose a different option if your original decision turns out to be a bad decision. Or a lot of times decisions we make, it's not that they were bad decisions initially. They might have been fantastic decisions initially, but it ends up down the road that our needs change. And the decision we made then is no longer serving us now. You always have the option to change, even if that's what happens. Even if you made a commitment to someone that you would stay on a certain path, even if you made a commitment to yourself, you're always free to change your mind and choose a different direction. Give yourself permission to change your mind at any point in the journey. That would be number one. I have used that throughout my entire life. Number two, we kind of already talked about it. If you're on the fence, one of the initial exercises should be make sure you're very, very clear about your goal, what it is you're trying to accomplish. Why is it that decisions of any options of any sort, decision making always involves options. Why is it that any kind of option is in front of you? What's the goal? Why are you even looking at options compared to just what you have been doing now? Why has that put itself in front of you? Because you've got some kind of objective. Well, what is it? And why is it, more importantly? Try to get in touch with the deeper desires of why have you set this particular goal for yourself. Let's say you're looking for a new job. This is just an example. You've decided that you want to make a career change. You're looking for a new job, and you've got a couple of offers have come in from different companies, and you're just confused. You're on the fence. You can't decide which one would be the best. And okay, so let's go back to why did you send out resumes in the first place soliciting a new job? What was it that you were hoping to accomplish in your life? What are the key things you wanted to achieve in getting this new position? And why did you want to achieve those things? Ask the why question, because it often will uncover, well, I wanted to get into a place where I'd have more human interfacing. I'm locked in my other office all the time out in that warehouse in my old job, and I never get to talk to any people. So you want a job that includes human interfacing, physical interfacing. Yes. Why? Well, because I've been feeling lonely. So okay, so a new job can help you with that, and which job of the two is going to provide the best capacity for loneliness is not going to be satisfied by surface relationships with people at work. You might be looking to solve that in other directions in your life, or you might be literally examining now both companies from the standpoint of, okay, considering if abating this loneliness that I've been feeling, if I consider both positions and the type of human interfacing that I'll be doing, the size of the company, the nature of the job itself, which company and which interfacing is likely to provide the most intimacy in interfacing, because that's probably what you're really after, is not just people in the environment, but people who are receptive and open and willing to establish relationships, in addition to just doing the cookie cutter work stuff every day. So all of a sudden your mind starts stretching a little bit. You start seeing some of the deeper motives, and it's perfectly okay to fill those with a job, but you got to be clear what the deeper motives are. Because if you're just saying, I want to be back where there's more people, you can end up with in a situation where you're as lonely as heck. If you didn't know, you're really looking for intimacy with people, not just more people. So there you have it. So clarify your goals and the why behind it. Check for, obviously, I already mentioned this, belief codes. If you're on the fence, there will be some kind of belief codes involved always. Do you have to clear belief codes to make a decision? No, absolutely not. Sometimes it may be necessary, especially if chaos program is running and you're really just in a stalemate, you're just paralyzed and just won't take a step in one direction or the other. If you're that fearful about moving one way or the other, get rid of the belief codes. And again, most often it will be some type of chaos programming. Otherwise, you'd be, jumping off on the side of the fence that was least fearful. When you can't get off at all, it's because neither choice is good. And get the belief codes off. But do you always have to do that? No, because a lot of times things like getting more information, some of the mundane things, like telling yourself you're always free to change your mind and choose a different future, even if the choice you make in this moment is a bad choice, that's okay. Make a bad choice. It's perfectly okay to do that. There aren't any rules that say you can't do that and recover. You can recover. And it doesn't even have to be painful on top of everything else. So some of the other strategies can really be helpful. Like, again, getting more information and some of the other things I'll discuss. But clearing belief codes, if you'll take the time to do that, will surely be helpful. The other thing you can do in lieu of clearing belief codes, or if you can't get them all, is raise energies. You can just simply ask the dowsing question, are there any energies I could raise around me, the environment, possibly your existing environment, or it might even be some other environment. Let's say you can't decide between two houses. You're thinking of buying a new home, and let's say there are three houses that look really great. You like something about all of them a lot, and you just can't decide behind the three houses. There's some kind of symbolism in all that is bringing belief codes to the surface. So you could look for the belief codes and clear them, and the decision would probably become more clear. If you get very, very clear with point number one of why you even decided to buy a new house, what's driving that, and what are the core experiences you want to have there, what are you looking for in a new home, if you get very, very clear about those, you may be able to really easily eliminate all but one option. But if you still can't get clear, and you've cleared, you clear as many belief codes as you can, you narrow down the not narrow down the options, but you get clear about what you're really after, and it's still not apparent, try raising energies. I would say, would it be beneficial towards making a clear decision to raise energies around myself, to basically damp down interference patterns so I can see the clear direction, so I can effectively move the clear intuitive insights through myself, or whatever other helpful insights I might get from the intelligences of nature, whatever, to help me know what is the best decision. Help my dowsing be right on track. If you're going to use a skill like that, a simple skill like dowsing, raise some energies, possibly. Would it be beneficial to raising the energies around me, around anyone else, or around any place, any environment. If in the housing situation, it might be important to raise energies around one or all of those homes to be able to get a clear picture as to what's the best decision. So, and it's very interesting to do this exercise, and it usually is do the word exchange method, and you can also add to that images, colors, whatever, but start with the word. Take positive word lists or a dictionary and get word frequencies that would be helpful in helping you clarify the decision-making process. It will be very interesting if anything has to go into any of those environments, if we're using the housing example, what the nature of the words are. It's always, you'll be, in more cases than not, it will be very telling as to why that either gets ruled in as the good decision after the fact or ruled out as a bad decision after the fact. The word clues alone, the words you need to raise, will end up being really valuable clues for you. So anyway, blah, 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 blah. The main goal is simply damping down interference patterns. Interference patterns would be stuff that might be thought forms in the example I'm using tonight, might be thought forms stuck in the houses. Like there might be one absolutely fantastic choice out of those three choices, but you can't perceive it because the people who lived there before you, there was a big thought form. Let's say they weren't getting along or they were having financial issues or something like that, and unbeknownst to you, because you haven't checked, there's a big thought form stuck in the house, and the thought form is creating so much interference that you're feeling uneasy about that house, and it actually isn't the house, it's the thought form that's stuck in the house, and that's very clearable. So again, that's why it might come up that you need to raise energy around an environment. Or you might have picked up a big goo ball, a big psychic goo ball from someone, and you're trying to make a decision about anything, but you've got this giant goo ball, maybe a fear ball from somebody, and every time you go to make that decision, you're just feeling so anxious, and lo and behold, it ends up it's only interference from this big goo ball that you've got. Yes, you've got some kind of belief code in there that has some kind of resonance to that, but what's really blowing it out of proportion and making you paralyzed about making a decision of any sort, staying on the fence, is actually somebody else's energy altogether. You move that, raising the energy can help damp that down, might even combust it, and all of a sudden the decision is crystal clear. How could I not have seen this before? Will be your reaction. It can be quite amazing to do energy raising. So that would be another strategy. Consciously assess, this would be a third thing. Consciously assess what you're afraid of losing. Remember I said that when people stay on the fence, when you can't decide, you're afraid of losing something, or getting hurt, or someone else getting hurt, or something getting hurt. Very often that will be conscious if you will just get quiet and think about and ask the question, okay, am I afraid of losing anything? Well, what could I possibly lose if this is if this is the wrong decision? What is at risk that I could possibly lose? And get face to face with that and say, okay, well, gosh, if I leave my job today and I go start that new business that I was thinking of starting, I could lose, the security. I could use all the savings I've built up, all the security I've built up. I might end up spending that all and end up with nothing. I wouldn't have, I'd be stepping out of the game and losing my position. Gosh, my next promotion, I'll be the senior vice president. I wouldn't be able to come back in and be right at that mark again. That's kind of a lot of loss. You face the loss, and then you do the next thing that you see here, and that's face the worst case scenario. Okay, what are you at risk of losing? And okay, so let's say you lost it all. Let's say you lost the business totally fails. You lose all your what's the worst case scenario? You lose it all, and maybe then some. You face the worst case scenario, and you ask yourself, would you survive it? And do you want what it is that you say you want enough to possibly experience the worst case scenario? It probably won't happen, but if it did, would you survive it? Usually our fears, the deepest fears, are something that are completely unlikely, like we would die. something like that. We're afraid we'd lose our job and we'd lose the money we have in the bank. But really underneath that at a subconscious level is some past life coding that says if you lose your job because this is what happened in a past life, you won't be able to feed yourself or your family and you'll all starve to death. But starving to death in this lifetime is never going to happen. We've got too many social welfare systems. It's never going to happen unless you just don't, take advantage of any of the systems that we have out there. You just simply wouldn't starve to death today. So what's the worst case scenario? Face the worst case scenario, and that begins by you really consciously thinking through what is at risk here. What can you sense is at risk here, and get it on the table. Dowsing for the best option is down at the bottom of the list here. Dowsing for the best option is great, or muscle testing for the best option, but you need to be really sure that, again, you don't have active belief codes up on the table. That's why we start with take a look at do you have, whether you choose to clear them or not is up to you, but do you have any active belief codes on the table? Because if you've got active belief codes up on the table that relate to your decision, and you go to do dowsing about the decision, there is a high likelihood of erroneous dowsing results. So best strategy would be clear belief codes and or raise energies to damp down the interference of the codes, then do the dowsing. The other caution about dowsing and decision making is you need to be very careful you don't fall into the trap of just really dowsing about everything and losing your capacity to make simple logical decisions, to be a simple effective decision maker without any kind of a dowsing tool or anything like that, without having to go into that kind of process to be able to see clearly or feel clearly with your heart that this is what I want. And the reason I know it's what I want is because I've done a good job of clarifying my objective and my heart is open and I can feel that calling to my heart. And so I know that's what I want. I don't need to swing a pendulum or a dowsing rod or muscle test myself because I know that that's what I want. I can feel it down to the bottom of my toes. I see a lot of people lose their capacity to make good decisions because they become way too reliant on things like their own dowsing skills or checking with some other psychic, their intuitive reader of whatever sort that might be, reading the cards to see what comes up. All of that is fine as a supplement, but again, you need to be careful of codependent relationships in that regard. Anyway, be very careful of that. I think I found myself, I know that I experienced that for a time, where I started getting kind of sloppy about using my heart. And that's a big mistake, I can tell you from experience. You don't want to get sloppy about using your heart. You want to exercise it very frequently, where I would just, instead of feeling it through what the right decision was, I just, start muscle testing. Is this the better option? Is this the better option? And you start kind of becoming a little bit numb to utilizing that tool. The other thing that will happen is you'll start, you'll often find yourself kind of in a trap of you'll get in a rut of here's my options, what's the best option, and you start dowsing, and for some reason the mind kind of closes off and it stops remembering that what you're looking at, none of those options might be the best option. The dowsing will give you the best option of the options that you're looking at, but there actually might be an option that's not on the table that you're not even, that won't even make it to the table because you have stopped connecting with your heart and really getting clear from a heart standpoint about what you want, and you can't even sense, if you're relying on dowsing that or basic intuitive skills, that what you really want isn't even one of the options that is in front of you. What you really want isn't even one of the options that's in front of you. I had a situation like this not too long ago where I was, I'm going to Ireland in a couple of weeks, and I never have liked flying out of Phoenix. I never have liked it, and the only thing that's really made it even bearable for me the last few years is that literally on every trip that I've gone on, Sydney Pinkerton has been with me. Sydney is a delightful person, and she has a daughter who lives down in the Scottsdale area, and so we would drive, Sydney would drive, and we would go down, we'd park the car at the daughter's house, except for the last time we actually parked at the airport, but we parked the car at the daughter's house, and then we'd go together to the airport. And because we were together, it kind of made it okay for me. But I really didn't like the drive home. You know, we'd be tired afterwards. It's stressful, all that kind of stuff. And I flat out, I just didn't like, I've never liked flying out of the Phoenix airport. So I thought, I actually had the thought that, you know, what would you really like? What would be the ideal situation? And I thought for a moment, well, you know, the ideal situation would be to fly out of Flagstaff, where I didn't even have to drive down there at all, and you know, a perfect connection. But gosh, and I instantly went into a limitation thing. I said I didn't even check it. I didn't check the Flagstaff option because I wanted to stay within a certain budget on this trip. And I said, you know, those Flagstaff flights are expensive. It'd be hard to get the right timing. I instantly just put the clamps down instead of just staying for a moment. I really pretty much tuned in to what is it that you'd really like, but negated it immediately. And then I've got all these flight options, and I'm trying to figure out what is the right flight option. I'm dowsing, I'm trying to sense it through, and I just can't find a flight option that really is appealing to me. And I can't decide what, I'm on the fence. I can't decide what is the best decision about this flight. I'm not jazzed about any of them. And I went back to this very strategy that I'm telling you. I said, well, let's get clear about, maybe you're having trouble because the fact is none of these are ideal, because it's a reality. None of them are ideal, and they're never going to be ideal. What happened to the idea of just making a decision about what you want, whether you can see any way of getting it or not? You know, I had a little chat with myself. What are you doing? Why have you stopped expecting the absolute best in a situation like this? Let's think about what the ideal thing would be. Well, I go back to that. The ideal thing would be I'd fly out of Flagstaff. The ideal thing would be it's a better price than I can even get out of Phoenix. That would be the ideal. The timing of the flights is perfect, absolutely perfect. And it would even be great if I didn't have to fly in one leg, where we could stop somewhere where the layover time wasn't excessive, where I could actually get off the plane and stretch a little bit and then get back on. Again, no excessive layovers. That would be ideal. And so what's the first step of seeing if the ideal plan is available? Is you get more information. I got on the internet. I went and looked, are there any, what are my options? I just went into one of the big, comparison things like, what are they called, Travelocity or whatever, and I put in, I want to fly from Flagstaff. And as odd as that is, and I want a great price and blah, blah, blah. And lo and behold, here's what I ended up with. I ended up with a price that was lower than any price ticket that I could find flying out of Phoenix. I'm flying out of Flagstaff, by the way. The timing is ideal. Ideal for me. This also was on my list. I do not like to I'm unwilling to get up at the crack of dawn to fly anywhere, or to come home at the crack of dawn. I want to be there. I want to be able to have a leisurely morning, say goodbye to my cats, have a nice breakfast, blah, 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 blah. This flight leaves at like 10 o'clock in the morning, so it's a leisurely drive up the mountain. I'll have time to say goodbye to everybody, have a nice breakfast, all that kind of stuff. The flight home, same thing. I get home at a reasonable hour. I won't be driving home at 1 o'clock in the morning. I stop in Philadelphia, and a friend who's meeting me in Philadelphia, she was able to coordinate her flight where she can get on the plane with me in Philadelphia. And the Philadelphia layover is like an hour and a half, which is perfect. Not too short, not too long. so I can get off the plane and stretch. And all. It truly, absolutely perfect. And the true test of it will be, and I'm confident will be perfect, but the true test will be me getting on that plane and it all going as I think it will go. But the point of the matter is I got the reason that stalemate happened, and stalemates don't happen to me that frequently, but the reason it happened with this is I'd really gotten, when it with mundane stuff like that, like picking an airline flight, had really gotten to me using dowsing and picking between options that I had accepted from the get-go weren't my ideal option. And I was letting that be okay instead of saying, and again, it was okay because I usually have other people with me that for them, this is great. It's great like for Sydney because her daughter's down there, all that kind of stuff. But for me, it's actually not ideal. But anyway, bottom line is the lesson is be cautious about dowsing everything. Be cautious if you do find yourself on the fence and you're just saying, I'm looking at all the options and gosh, none of these seem like good choices. It could very well be that none of them are good choices, really good choices. And there's probably one in there that's better than the rest, and the dowsing will tell you that. But you need to open your mind and say, wait a second, if I could have the ideal situation, why am I thinking none of these are good choices? What's not ideal about them? What then would be the ideal situation? And why am I just not making that happen? What has happened to my feeble brain that I'm thinking that, and heart that I'm thinking that I can't make that happen? Make it happen. That's the lesson. Make it happen because you have the power to do it. So anyway, be careful about the dowsing. Way too many people get trapped in that. Gather more information. Again, we already talked about that a little bit. A lot of times, really, it's not prudent to make a decision because you haven't done proper investigation on a very mundane level. Jumping into a relationship. I have a situation here in Sedona, a place where I have my hair cut, and the guy who owns the shop, he not too long ago got married to this woman that he met after knowing her for something like a month. And no prior connection, anything like that. Well, that's what I call not enough information. And he was quick to make a decision, which speed of making decisions is one great, you get a merit badge for that. But again, if you want to make good decisions, you probably want to have a little bit more information than that. And sure enough, the guy starting like month number 2, 3, 4, 5, I saw this guy last week and he just looked like absolute hell because things are not going well in the relationship. And I can guarantee you that relationship is not going to work out. Now, it could be that it would work out. I don't want to say that there's never a decision you'll make just like that on very little data that won't work out. But man, if it's a big decision, you logically should gather quite a bit of data before you make a commitment of any sort to any decision, and it's more likely you'll feel confident going forward with the decision you made, and it's more likely that it will actually work out. And we can almost always gather more information. There's very few decisions you'll ever make where you can't get more information. Might be on a stock that you're thinking of buying. Well, look up the company. Don't just rely on your stockbroker. Look up the company. What do they say about the company? What have they been doing? What have they been up to? What are their value systems? All that kind of thing. What's the likelihood, just logically, that they're going to have a good future? Use the peak-to-peak principle. We've talked about this in other programs. Some of you have taken the Conscious Creator training. The peak-to-peak principle is that idea that was initiated by Robert Schuller, and that is the idea that, okay, here you are. Here's how you use it for on the fence situations. I'm on the fence. I can't decide. I've got these options. Okay, just flat out begin it. Pick one, any one, doesn't matter which one you pick, and begin it. Take a step, an action step in the direction of one of those options, a small step. And then look around, how does that feel? and you look for what's the next step and take another step in the direction of fulfilling whatever that direction is, or whatever it might be. An action plan. You have two different action plans you have to choose from in your marketing. I'm just using a business scenario. In a marketing strategy, you can go this way or you can go this way, and remember, there could be a third way. You may not have all the best options on the table, but let's say you do have the best options. Which is the very best out of these two choices, this way or this way? Well, if they're that close that you can't decide, just go pick one, any one. It doesn't matter which one, and start taking steps. As you get step by step down plan A, just continue to look around. What's the next step? What's the next step? How does this feel? How does this feel? How does this feel? Is this working? Is it panning out to be a good option? Sometimes you'll be looking at options that are pretty equally matched. Either one would be a good option. That's another thing to remember, is that either way it plays, it could be, either plan could be good. That can happen. So you just have to keep on testing the water. Walk forward in either direction. How are you liking it now? Go all the way back to what I said in the beginning. You're always free to change your mind. If you discover after you start walking in a certain direction, doing the peak-to-peak baby step plan towards getting to the goal, you're always free to change your mind and choose go back the other way or find another option altogether. You're always free to do that. Expand your options. How do you expand your options when the real problem is you just haven't found, the airlines, you haven't found any option. That's why you can't decide that really fits the bill. You just haven't found it. What do? Do right brain problem solving. And this is just a simple exercise where you start listing options. What are other options, other potential directions I could go, or other potential ways I could, again, it's like solving a problem. What are other options that I don't have on the table? And you start brainstorming. Get other people involved with you if you can, to help you brainstorm. Family members, associates, things like that. What are some of the other options you can think of? And just start building your list. Your left brain, your very logical mind, has a capacity in most cases to come up with about 13 or 14 choices maximum, using just sheer left brain thinking, which is what will happen initially. You'll reach kind of a stalemate, but you have to keep on pushing yourself, and your mind will be literally jump started into what's called right brain problem solving. And you'll begin, it's kind of like me. That's what happened to me. I was in that airline thing, is I had thought, I was probably looking at 13 different options, and just none of them felt right. But I was kick-started into right brain problem solving. Wait a minute, what are some of the other options? Well, wait a minute, maybe I could fly out of Flagstaff. Maybe I could blah, 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 blah. Or part of the deal is one of the options that I did get some other options on the plate, by the way. I didn't just get the Flagstaff thing. I did, before I made the call to Flagstaff, think of some other options. I thought of the things I didn't like about the Phoenix thing, and one of the things was that I just really didn't like the drive. I didn't like taking a shuttle company. I didn't like driving myself, because then I don't want to have my car there. My little car, I don't even know if it can actually make it there comfortably. I might be worried about that, but mainly I don't like taking the shuttle company. And I thought, well, hey, one of the things I could do, this is right brain problem solving. If it's just a matter of you don't like the drive down and back, maybe you could talk a friend into driving you down and back, because that I would feel very comfortable with. I still don't like Phoenix. I still would prefer a different place, but maybe that would be, but it wasn't my ideal choice. My ideal choice was Flagstaff, and that's the direction I ended up going. So blah, 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 blah. But expand your options by brainstorming and forcing yourself to get to 21, this is the magic number, ideas. 21 ideas. And you don't stop brainstorming until you get 21 ideas or options on that paper. There are always 21 options, at least. There's always at least 21 options. And after option number 13, there's always 21 solutions to solve any problem. After option number 13, you'll go into right brain problem solving, if not before. And you will come up with the right and perfect, because you'll get out of the way. You'll start having fun with it. No holds barred. What would work, whether you're willing to do it or not. That's how you have to approach this exercise. what would be an option, whether you would be willing to do it or not. Like, would I be actually willing to call a friend and ask them to drive me 2 hours down and I don't know if I'd be willing to do that. I don't know if I'd be willing to do that, but it's an option. It is an option. So it goes onto the paper. That's how you've got to do that exercise. Experiment with your options. This is a great one. If you have, you could go either way. Sample both. Make no decision and simply sample both experiences. I did this with a situation a few years ago. At the time, I was in a relationship, and my partner and I really wanted to move to this little place called Lake Montezuma. He loved it too, and we had gotten back. We had been together for a long time, and then gone through a small breakup, and then we got back together, and we thought this would be a good thing, and mainly I was excited, and he was willing kind of to come along with the whole thing because he didn't really care where he was living. So anyway, we found this wonderful house down in Lake Montezuma, but there were a variety of reservations for a variety of reasons. Number one, I didn't know if it would be energetically compatible for me, which is a very important thing to me. A few other considerations. So we didn't buy the house flat out. We, out the gate, said, we would like to do a lease option on the house with an option to buy it in 6 months, and we'll put up a significant amount of money to do that, but we want to try the house out. We want to try the area out and see if it's actually a good fit for us versus jumping in hook, line, and sinker. Well, it ended up that it wasn't a good fit. Several months after we actually moved into the house or started staying down there, it was a beautiful home on a golf course, and a number of different problems occurred right before this very last one, the kind of straw that broke the camel's back. But they closed the golf course. The golf course went bankrupt, and this is a golf course home. So the value of the home dropped about $100,000 overnight, and that was the end of that. I mean, we had other signs, and that was absolutely the end of that. During the time period, we also discovered that it really wasn't a personality match for us. When we were going down to that area all the time, we would go there probably 2 or 3 times a week, spend time hiking in the area, doing different things, loved the restaurant at the golf course, all this kind of stuff. We spent a lot of time down there, but when you were actually living down there and interfacing with the other people that lived there, it's not that they're not nice people, but it wasn't a personality match for us. And but it took sampling to actually figure that out. I was in the rental business for a long, long time, and I got very tuned to the idea of sampling there because people are, I was in the furniture rental business, the residential furniture and office furniture business, and many times people would sample, especially in office furniture rental, they'd sample certain furniture configurations, certain types of furniture, and then decide that no, this isn't right, we want to try this, or no, we want to try this, and they'd end up ultimately, in many cases, buying the furniture, but they'd done sampling to find out exactly, whether that was intended or not, exactly what was the right fit for them. You can do that with cars. Car is a big investment. If you're on the fence about buying a car, why don't you figure out the ones that you like the best? Every single model of car can be rented. Rent the car first, drive it for a week or two, see how you like it, and if you love it, then buy the car. Buy not that car, but buy that model of car. You can sample most anything. I mean, you can sample relationships, you can sample romantic partners, you can sample houses, you can sample cars, you can sample restaurants, you can sample all kinds of stuff. So think about experimenting before you actually plunge. Lastly, tuning, and I've already mentioned this a little bit, but tuning to the call of your heart. The heart really, especially with big decisions, if it's a matter of, do I choose this kind of paper for my copy machine or this kind of paper for my copy machine, am I going to engage my heart with that? No, I'm not, and am I going to use dowsing for that? No, I'm not, I'm just going to say, well, I like the fact that this one's a little bit whiter, and yeah, it's $1 more, but gosh, for that whiteness, I think I'll take that. I can afford it, blah, blah, blah. Whatever makes me, I guess it is heart, whatever makes me feel better in the moment. Okay, I'll do that, blah, blah, blah. But the big decisions, especially, your deepest self, which communicates through the heart, not through the brain, your deepest self, and your core desires, those things that really push the deepest positive buttons in you in this lifetime that fulfill you the most. And big decisions are usually going to impact the fulfillment factor of, they're going to overlap the fulfillment factor of every aspect of your life. The jobs you choose, literally the cars you drive, the home you live in, the friends you hang out with, the groups you decide to join, that type of thing. You need to feel, not think about the choices. How do I feel when I think about, I've got X amount of time, I want to cultivate a little more social activity, I've got X amount of time available, I could join this group or that group. And yes, you should have some logical thoughts about that, but when you think about either group, how do you feel? How do you feel? And again, there's a perfect opportunity for sampling. Go spend some time with the groups, and how do you feel every time you're with the group? Choose the group where you feel the best. Choose the group where you feel the best. And anyway, that would be my suggestion there. But listen to the call of your heart. That was the big mistake I was making with that airport situation. Is my heart was yearning for a very, very easy way to handle the travel end of this trip. Business trips, I'm okay with doing extra effort, stuff like that, but this is a fun trip. This is just for me. This is just for pure fun and joy. And I was looking at something that didn't involve a joy factor, and I knew it. And the only reason I stayed stuck in that mode is because I wasn't listening to my heart. And my heart was calling for something like Flagstaff. So listen to your heart, and it's amazing how the gateways will open. And start taking action steps in the direction that the heart is calling, and the gateways will open for that to be realized in the way that is most fulfilling for you. So anyway, that would be my suggestion there. Okay, and I think that is it. Ways to overcome it. It is. Those are my best options for tackling on the fence behavior. It starts with belief code work if you know how to do it, or teach yourself how to do it. If you can't really flesh it all out that way, whether it's chaos programming or just some other kind of belief code structure, go for energy raising. See if that doesn't clear it up. Ask some basic questions. Do you have enough information? Logically, we have a left and a right brain. We have logic capability for a reason. Use logic and use all your senses for this, for good decision making. But do you have enough information to make a good decision? If not, get more. If you're not satisfied with any of the options, what other options can you think of? Do right brain problem solving. Give yourself permission to experiment, to not make a decision now. That's the other thing I've always done with myself, and I've gotten better even at this as I've gotten older, because I've had enough experience now to really realize that it's true. Very few decisions you'll ever face in your life have to be made right now. And that's another thing. Give yourself permission to slow down and really think and feel it through. Test the water. There are some decisions that there's a risk of losing out if you don't move a little more quickly, but not that many. And so again, even ones that it feels like there's a lot of pressure to make a decision right now, even those, a lot of times the pressure is illusional, and someone else is putting it on you, and in fact there actually isn't that much pressure. The realtor is trying to convince you to buy the house right now because it's going to get, it could get snapped up by someone else any minute. And the reality is you go in and get a little more information, and you look at the listing and you see that it's been on the market for 18 months without a bite. It's still sitting there, and the price has not gone down significantly from where it was listed originally. And you do a little research on your own, you look at comparables in the area, and there's lots of juicy comparables. There's no logical reason that house is likely to get snapped up tomorrow. There's not. You probably have plenty of time to make a decision. By the way, even if somebody did come in and snap it up, there's always the opportunity for you to say to your realtor, you go back in and you make a higher offer, and whatever, you make sure they know that there's someone else that's interested that might pay more, and start raising energies to see if you can still get the house, because I've seen that happen many times. So anyway, always recognize that you rarely have to make a decision just like this, and usually if you do decide just like that, think of the story I told you about the guy who owns the hair shop. It's very often not going to be a very good decision because you weren't using very good decision-making strategies in the process. So gather a lot of information, experiment, listen to your heart. You'll make good decisions. You'll you'll make more and more good decisions. You'll get off the fence faster, and you'll trust your decisions because how do we trust decisions? A lot of people will ask me that, like, how do you trust your dowsing? How do you trust your decision making? Make good decisions. Get good dowsing results.